Good afternoon, everybody. A big hello from the Writers Guild of Ireland. I'm Alan Kerwin, the events coordinator for the Writers Guild. And thank you very much for joining us for this afternoon's session, which is a really interesting one called Commissioner's Briefing. And in order for this obviously to take part, we've brought together a really fantastic panel of commissioners for you. And they're going to obviously go through what they do and offer any advice and suggestions that would be very useful for you all. So essentially, the lineup that we have Sam Atwell, the development executive from drama at RTE. We have Deirbhile Churraighín, who is the commissioning and acquisitions editor at TG4. Also coming there is Eddie Doyle, and he's the senior head of content commissioning, BBC Northern Ireland. And last but certainly not least is Colin Pauser-Cowman, who is the commissioning lead at Virgin Media Television. And putting it all together and holding the debate and putting the questions is the chair of the WGI, Jennifer Davidson.
Thanks so much, Alan. Welcome, everybody. As Alan said, we've got a really great panel gathered this afternoon. We run these events thanks to sponsorship funding from the BAI. So as always, a huge thank you to them. We will have time for a Q&A at the end. So type your questions in the chat, either during the conversation as we go, or at the end, and then we'll get to the questions through the chat box. But that is it. You're not really here to listen to me, you're here to listen to our brilliant panel. So what I might do, Alan has told you who they are and where they're from and what their job titles are, but let's hear a little bit more from them all. And I've got a little bit of an icebreaker question actually for our panelists, just to throw them in the deep end to start. So I'll go to you one by one just to kind of give the panel a bit of info about yourselves, but also I'd love you to tell us what is the one program that you wish that you had actually commissioned, that someone else either on the panel or from a totally different channel has commissioned? What's that one thing that you wish had come across your desk? So I might start with Eddie, please.
Hello. Well, what's the one? Well, bizarrely, I mean, we actually had when I was still in RT, we did a decent turn in co-commissioning with the Young Offenders and Mrs. Brown's Boys with the BBC before I went and moved over there. We actually were playing footsie a few years ago with Channel 4 as well, and we came quite close to coming on board for Sharon Horgan's Catastrophe, and that was literally catastrophic in that I think we were all within the department were really keen on the show before when it was at script stage, but we just couldn't get senior management to buy into it. So that was genuinely a catastrophe. So when I see it in the telly now, I think, well, that it's a fantastic show that I enjoy a lot, but it caused me some degree of pain.
I can imagine. Great. Colin, what about you?
So I was being a good boy and switching my microphone off, Jennifer. Anything Eddie Doyle would have commissioned, actually, would be my answer. No, I suppose things I've enjoyed recently, probably Mayor of Easttown would be something I think would have been terrific to have. Ticks a lot of boxes and very enjoyable.
Brilliant. Deirbhile?
Well, I suppose I just consume a lot of drama. There's a lot of stuff that I really like that's on at the minute. In my previous life, I was a buyer. So I watched and bought a lot of drama. For commissioning wise, Breaking Bad. I mean, it did really well for us, but even on top of, in any language, the best drama that performed for us, acquired drama in any language, was Borgen. Borgen got in more figures than any other drama in English or Irish or Swahili, just because of, I think, the casting as well as the story. And the first series was great. You know, it kind of, you know, lost its way towards the end, but the first series, it was mind blowing how high the figures were for that. Our own drama, at the minute, we're in the process of commissioning it. All our money is going into Cine but we are, with Físéideann and the BAI, developing drama for under 35s. And also there's a drama for under 15s, because we haven't had anything since Africa. And Africa is still very, very high figures on the player, because there isn't any other drama at the moment for Irish-speaking children. But we are in the process of commissioning another one. So there's a lot of development going on, and a lot of, you know, gathering people together. But yeah, it's all in the pipeline where drama is concerned at us.
Fantastic. That's
yeah.
great. Sam, over to you.
Thanks. Hi. I think probably recently, maybe The Virtues, because I think it's just blew my mind as to what television can do. And I guess I was lucky enough to watch the BAFTA session with the cast and crew and quite a lot of different departments. And it was like the teamwork of these people and the way they all gathered around Shane Meadows and the honesty in telling his story. It just, I just think it was a landmark kind of television, and kind of set the bench for a new era, and something I'd love to be involved in. So yeah, that and I love sex education as well, because the inclusivity of it is just absolutely brilliant. And again, setting kind of new ground of what we should expect from television. So those two, I wish I'd been there at the time.
Great. So that's kind of given us a flavor of you guys and kind of your own taste. But what I'd like to move on to next then is to give us a sense of what sums up your broadcaster, what makes a unique RTE or TG Ceathair or BBC Northern Ireland or Virgin Media show. What is the thing that sets you guys apart from each other? Sam, do you want to kick us off on this?
Sure, I'll give it a bash. As I said, I've been lucky enough to just start in this role a few months ago, so I'm on a steep learning curve. As I said to the other panelists today, I'll be learning a lot from you guys, and it's lovely to see some friendly faces in the audience as well. But I think RTE is especially really trying to, as along with those shows that I just mentioned, we're really trying to push the bounds of the boundaries, of what we're doing, and even the latest marketing campaign, looking for new local talent and local drama. And I think drama that really makes you question and is edgy. I think we're kind of looking for new and unique voices and unique ideas. We've just launched Storyland yesterday, which I think it's got a new face on it, really. It's got a new budget for it, and we're really trying to get as broad a range of people as we can to give ideas. It's also going on to, it's always been on the player, but now it's going on to RTE2, so everyone involved will get a broadcast credit. So I think we're really trying to, especially after we've all had such a break from the industry that none of us wanted. So I think we're really trying to pull together as many new voices and new stories as we can.
Brilliant. Deirbhile, what about TG Ceathair? What makes a quintessential TG Ceathair show? Oh, you're on mute there?
Not like me now to be on mute. For TG Ceathair, we like the dramas to have very deep roots in the Irish landscape. You know, of course, the language is the number one for us, and with the BAI and Físéideann, what we're trying to do is develop new writers in the Irish language. When you look at, take for example, Aracht, which is in the cinemas this week. I hope you all go and see it before it leaves. Tom O'Sullivan had written short films before, but this was his first feature film. So what we're trying to do all the time is take people who know how to do this and raise the platform. So the same happened with Sean Branagh and Foscu, which will be released in spring 2022 and is IFTA's contender for foreign language feature in the Oscars this year, as Aracht was last year. We're learning all the time. But it's to, you know, try to get the writers to give them another platform to upskill them. And that's our main difficulty at the moment, is getting Irish language writers because they're not numerous. So anything we can do to help them, should it be mentoring, script editing, whatever. And across the board with the Sunny Cahir scheme is upskilling everybody. You know, directors, producers, editors, cinematographers, everybody that, because we have the skills, they just need the platform. So Sunny Cahir has been very successful in that. The under 35s that are in development at the minute, drama for under 35s, they're all, you know, they're all there, but we can only afford to produce one. And this is also where TG Cahir is from a budget point of view. We're on a much lower budget than everybody else. We'd like to try and address that in the next few years, because I mean, I don't know if this number is correct, but one of our Sunny Cahirs is shooting at the minute in Kerry, Tarek, and trying to get crew was an absolute nightmare, because at the minute, if this number is correct, maybe Sam or Eddie will know, there's 25 shoots going on in Dublin alone, not to talk about what's happening in the rest of the country. Also, we need people like editors that can speak Irish as well, because you can't edit what you don't understand. But key for us is language, agus an súlile. You know, Aracht did it, Foscu did it. We're hoping that the under 35s do it. And we're also having, going to make a drama for the under 15s, because like I was saying, they've had nothing since Africa. But producing in the Irish language has its delights, but also it's very hard to find co-producers. Like, you know, I was looking at the credits for Bloodlands, which I'm really enjoying. I mean, there's so many co-producers, Eddie, and there's so much, like, there's money coming in from everywhere. At TG Cahir, it's the magic triangle. It's TG Cahir, Fee Shading, and the BAI. And we have to try and get as much done with that budget as we can. You know, we do co-produce internationally on other things, especially documentaries. I don't know if you've seen them on Tides. There's one on Walls. There's one on Rain coming up. So it's like we can co-produce with documentary, but with drama, it's very difficult to get a partner to co-produce in the Irish language. The ILBF, definite one of our co-productions, a feature film called Dunyan, is premiering in Belfast in the next few weeks. So, you know, BBC Northern Ireland, ILBF, you know, we co-produce a lot on various things. But basically with TG Cahir, language is first, content is key, and it has to have very strong roots, not so much in the Gaeltacht, but in the Irish-speaking world, if possible. And with Cinecar, you know, we develop 5, we do 1 or 2. And it's heartbreaking to have to say to people, we can't go ahead with this, because it's purely funding. It's purely funding. We've had to let go of projects that we really, really like, but from a funding point of view, we can only do so much. So that's where we are. I hope that's informative.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Eddie, talk to us a bit about BBC Northern Ireland and what sort of a definitive BBC Northern Ireland drama might be.
Well, I suppose it's not dissimilar to some of the stuff you've heard already. You know, I mean, I suppose the BBC, like RTE, like TG Cahir, we're kind of it's publicly funded. So, and we're all on this kind of journey now. What does
I'm not that bothered. I just wanted to hear the news.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Eddie.
Sorry.
Just a reminder to anyone
Sorry.
in the audience, just keep your mics off, please. Sorry, Eddie,
So,
go on.
Sorry. So what does public service mean in the current, you know, highly connected, fast-moving global environment, especially for the writers on the call here, how to get your scripts to air? I think, you know, we'll probably end up talking about, you know, we talk a lot about 2. You know, I think public service has kind of 2 elements to it. You know, one's quite high-minded and the other one's quite sort of nuts and boltsy. So it's, you know, how can you support projects that are culturally pioneering, that say something specific and kind of high-minded and important? What are the important scripts to kind of to plant your flag on and to bring to air at this moment in time? And that's evolving based on, you know, society's evolving, new writers, all that stuff. So there's the high-minded piece. And then there's a separate piece which about kind of championing local creativity in the local creative sector in particular, which is a bit more nuts and boltsy, which is about like, well, how much money have you got? You know, so if you don't have the cash, your choices are limited, as we've discussed. And everybody's kind of in different variations of, nobody has enough money to support this stuff. You know, in a period where there's a kind of there's something like a kind of a global gold rush and crashing into the scripted genres and a lot of inflation in the scripted genres, and you know, they're quite defining pieces for broadcasters on linear and the iPlayer as well. So we're all trying to get into that territory with a limited amount of money. Hence, as Deirbhile says, there's kind of the partnership agenda is crucial there for everyone. You know, where if you can bring lots of co-production partners to the table, and increasingly, I think that's a kind of audiences are more forgiving now of kind of content, you know, if there's subtitles on it, you know, so there's the market itself is almost is bigger again. So like, it's an interesting time, you know. I would say for us, you know, the things that I think that we're sort of interested in, when, you know, on that culturally significant piece or that culturally pioneering piece, I think you know, we're particularly interested in a sense of place. You know, I think that what do you call him? John Bowman's book about RTE is called Window and Mirror. And I think that's an interesting way to describe a public service broadcaster. It's both a kind of a mirror for places to look at themselves, or a society to look at itself, you know, warts and all on some occasions, but also a window for the world, you know, for us to see the world and for the world to see us, you know. And I think that's what, you know, on a more kind of vulgar end, that's what we've got to sell, is something important about this place, this people, this voice in this kind of global marketplace. So you'd look at, so for me, if you look at Derry Girls, I think the rules of that are really interesting. You know, a small but perfectly realized little world, which you can kind of the behavior has its own conflicts and relationships and rules that you can step into. It's almost like you can do tourism from your sofa. You can step into, have a little city break in Derry from your sofa and step into that world, and it all makes sense, and you can step out of it again. And I think that's kind of, I think that sense of place is important for the sort of content that will get traction from this island in the global marketplace right now. And then the you know, the other kind of bit of it is that the vulgar bit of, like, you know, what's the pie chart look like? You know, who's on board? What soft monies you're bringing to the table? You know, you can see Virgin are kind of active in that territory. Like, you know, Sam would have. That's what I would have done when I was in RTE. Or our whole scripted comedy strategy was based on some of the sources we've talked about there. Tax break, 481, BAI, RTE's own money, and some distribution money, and whatever you have in yourself, and then you were away to the races, you know. And there's different iterations of that now. So I'm almost kind of like, you're looking for a beautiful script, but I'm also looking for like a beautiful pie chart with lovely little wedges in it. But that's what we're at the minute, you know.
That's really helpful. Great. So Colin, moving to you. Obviously, you guys are commercial broadcasters, so it's a little bit different. But what are Virgin Media looking for in their flagship dramas?
Well, it's funny actually, because like Eddie mentioned, much of the themes are the same in the sort of scope of what we're looking for. Yes, I think back to Eddie's point about the pie chart, I think we live in a pie chart environment. We are, as you mentioned, a commercial channel, but we've very high aspirations for the drama projects that we get involved with. The scripted projects, they have to be very contemporary. They have to work at a 9 o'clock slot. So I mean, look, some of these things sound like hard knocks, but really what we're talking about here is contemporary, nudging more towards urban. The thriller sort of structures tend to work very well for us. Hour-long structures for us, again, sort of 4 parts or 6 parts by way of hours, tend to work really, really well. The reason I mentioned 9 o'clock is that we have a very interesting relationship. Obviously, we spend a lot of money on our output deal with ITV, so that gives us a lot of content, as you know, coming through onto the channel. But what it's also given us is a lot of years of being able to try out different styles and different genres to see what is really resonating with our viewers and with our audience. And we've got a lot of metrics around those. Does that mean that we won't take a chance on lots of different genres? We will, but we have a good sort of flavor and a handle on what types of structures, what types of genres, what types of themes work well. One thing we don't tend to look for, although I will say for sure, thrillers are sort of at the heart of what we're doing. If you think in terms of, you know, Blood, we've got a new series we've co-produced with ITV coming next year, Redemption. We have the Graham Norton script book Holding, which is now finished shooting, again a co-production with ourselves and ITV. Very excited to have that coming next year also. Right through to, I have a list of a few I can go through with you just as we're going through it. But I suppose the key thing really is that, and again back to the inheritance piece, from the 9 o'clock junction for us, you're coming right off the back of some of those big heavy hitters on the channel, like Coronation Street, the big numbers winners, and you know, it's moving into the space where we really want to champion all of our dramas in very sort of prominent spots. So they have to be sort of broad. We can't really go the niche approach, and you know that traditionally does mean that we wouldn't be looking at historical dramas, for example. They tend to have thriller at the heart. Crime, obviously, investigation works well in our kind of world as well. It does not mean that we wouldn't look at something else, but I'm just giving you sort of a bit of a steer on the sort of shapes that work for us. Female lead characters, very strong for us. Always goes down very well. And you know, I suppose when some of the others have mentioned about sort of the approach to talent, we're very, 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 very keen on sort of using vehicles to bring forward diverse talent, local talent, and really get in behind those as well. But the whole focus here as well is that they have to work for us here, but really have international legs. And that sort of dovetails into how that Eddie Doyle, you mentioned the pie chart. You know, the pie chart for us is very important. We've had enormous success with with co-production deals. We're very lucky in that sense. And yes, you've got the soft monies models if you think in terms of the Section 481, Screen Ireland, BAI, our own input, but co-production is very important to us as well. And that brings in the next piece of the pie, which is obviously distribution deals. Again, the likes of ITV Global previously with ourselves, channel link-ups with the likes of Channel 5, Netflix in some of the mixes as well, the likes of Cardboard Gangsters, and again, all three media and so on. So we're very, very well placed in that sense to kind of explore these things. So we will always be looking at an international lens. And again, the local flavor is very, very important. It can't just be something that sort of feels a little Irish, but will travel well. It has to be built out of the DNA of the experiences to be found here. It generally tends to work really well for us, and authentically, they're the voices we like to give the microphone to. There's lots of opportunities with Virgin Media, but I suppose even just an example we're going into our year 3 now of our VM Discovers, which is quite a nice little model. And Deirbhile, you were mentioning about the opportunity to train up and nurture, and I absolutely applaud TG Carr for the work you guys have been doing in that space. It's absolutely exceptional, and you've been doing it right back to Ross and Roon day one. You've just got this extraordinary nurturing approach to talent, something we can all learn from. From our perspective, VM Discovers is a great vehicle for us in that space, where we have a diversity and inclusion lens. And when I say lens, they're diversity and inclusion projects from the DNA, from the ground right up. And we're very excited that we're going into our third round of that now. We've got 2 short films. Now, they're really well structured because the way the competition works is that 10 projects get development funding, and then 2 projects get €30,000 to make short films, ranging between about 12 and 15 minutes. But that's extraordinary because the sort of talent that we're working with and nurturing, and we have mentorship processes in place, and we might get into matching with crew, matching with productions, as Deirbhile says, if we can find the crew. Yeah, they're there. A lot of this is about scheduling, but yeah, very tough. But we're massively committed to that. And one lens that I think is important to look at these things through as well is that diversity cannot just be on screen. And I think that's really, really important. So diversity, inclusion, new talent initiatives, that we see that play out in the fabric of the crew as well, the writer, the director. Authenticity is very, very important for us, like massively important. The scripts need to feel contemporary, they can be subversive. As Bill Malone will often say, we will do something about a murder, but it doesn't have to be a body found at the bottom of a cliff and then sort of whodunit. What's the subversive angle? How do we kind of flip these pieces on the head? So that's hopefully a little bit of a steer. Obviously there'll be Q&A as well, but just to give you a bit of an overview.
That's brilliant. Really insightful from all of you. So I suppose what a couple of you touched on there was about developing new writers and new talent. And obviously, writers can sometimes feel at a little bit of a remove from broadcasters, that, they need to have a producer on board in order to sort of get in front of you guys. So I want to just kind of chat a bit about what you guys can do and I hate the phrase new writers and emerging writers, because I think that always makes us think about young writers straight out of college, and while that's really important, there are writers at various levels of their careers who are still looking for, that breakthrough into primetime drama. So yeah, let's just chat a bit about supports and development for writers. Deirbhile, do you want to kick us off?
I think that for TG Carr, we do like to have the producer on board, because we like to, if you're talking about a cine Carr or a drama series for under 35s, there are robust companies that can pull this off. and there are companies that have no experience in that field. So we do like to match the producer to the project, because that gives us a very clear indication of how robust that company is, and do they have the resources to pull this off. And yeah, we do like, when we get to the stage of development, I mean, we get treatments in and we shortlist them, and then we shortlist them again. But the final 5, they have to be connected to a producer. That conversation has already had to be taken place. We also like to know who the key team is on this project, going into the final development, as in who's the director, what's their vision for the project, who's the producer, and who are the key talent on screen. So yes, we do like to have a producer on board for development.
And would you ever recommend producers to writers if a writer has a project but doesn't have a producer on board? Is that something you guys can do?
Well, we don't tend to do that too specifically, because then you're putting a steer on it that might not work.
Sure.
So, but we do, you know, the information on the companies who have done this type of project before as Gaeilge, they're there. The information is there. So it's, you know, it's for the writer to go to the production house, should it be Macalla or Abu Media or Tua Films, you know, Rosk, you know, companies who have done this before and who know how to do it in as Gaeilge, and also who have a Rottweiler of an accountant, because the budget has to be, you know, we have a very definite budget and you cannot go over it. And so the accountant also needs to be all over it. And, you know, sometimes with projects, we've had to let them go because we just knew to look at it. There's under no circumstances can this be done for the money that we have. So, yeah, so sometimes that, you know, it fails on that. Like, for example, there was one which we really liked, but in order for the drama to work, a trawler had to be sunk with somebody on board. Oh. Now, that would be the entire budget to pull that stuff off. So, you know, yeah, we always say to the producers and the writers, cut your cloth to suit. And if it means rewriting things and taking things out that's going to put the budget over, do that. I mean, we do, you know, if we like something, we want to support it as much as we can, but also keep in mind the money that is available, and they must cut their cloth to suit. Yeah.
Now that makes a lot of sense. Sam, I know you guys have just launched the new Storyland yesterday, but just chat to us a bit about what RTE can do with writers or for writers, and also, you know, what you can't do.
Yeah, well, I think we've also, before that, and we're still working through it now, we launched last year an RTE drama call out and also an RTE comedy call out, which is different to Storyland in that people put through a submission on our e-commissioning website, which is that also works on a rolling commissioning basis and submission basis, so you can put through a submission there. And so these all came through and were part of that initiative with Screen Island, the two of them. Obviously I'm over the drama and Justin Healy's over the comedy, but then we whittled them down with different notes from a fair few different people, and then came, I think at the moment we're down to 8 different productions and programs, and some of them are half hour, some of them are an hour, and they're all very, very different, all for RTE2. But I think what Deirbhile was saying there is really important, because a lot of them, there are a lot of really great ideas, but what separates kind of the great ideas is the team that is attached to it, and a knowledge. I think what Eddie said about pie charts, and also an accountant is really important, because you see some of these great ideas and you might not know the team, and that's fine. But then you see the budget proposed and it could be outlandish, or it might not be enough. And so I think it's really important to get through to that stage, that you, even if it means, if you're young, there are some really young companies on there that we look at as well. That certainly doesn't push anyone out. And I would really push for new and young companies. But I think if you're in that position, and I've been in that position myself, I think it's really important to get a mentor, or someone who really knows what they're doing financially and legally, because as Eddie said, there's two sides of a public broadcast, and there are a lot of hoops to jump through and a lot of boxes to tick, and it does take someone sort of behind you to kind of have that experience to get you through, so your really good idea doesn't get lost. I mean, I think like there are some examples where, you know, people just didn't fill in the form right, and that's really sad to see. So I think the other side of it is, Mike, it might take a while, but we're really open, David Crane as well, we're really open to writers getting in contact and going, this is an idea, and is that in the ballpark, before they submit it to the e-commissioning system. And I know that we have a program that was actually, I think, sort of given its birth in one of these sessions, that came from someone, a writer who didn't have a production company, and then we gave you some recommendations and she approached them. But I think there are so many great writers, obviously everyone here included, that have so many great ideas, and I think it can be really hard to find the right production company. But I think it's a really important process for a writer to go, this is who I would love to make my show. And, you know, you might have 5 of those, but I think that is part of producing television, I think. And that's something, that kind of knowledge and commitment is something I guess we're really looking for as a broadcaster.
Brilliant, thanks.
Could I jump in on that one as well, just about the, you know, who approaches what? I think it would be useful for everybody just to kind of even think in terms of, and you mentioned, Sam, there about e-commissioning, is just kind of what sort of shapes and, you know, where does it go wrong as far as a pitch, and what sort of stands out? Because, you know, I think we'll all share some experiences of reading many proposals coming through, and what stands out for us and what gives us that sense of commissioning confidence. And I think they're two very important words, commissioning confidence, when you put the two together, because, you know, we'll always have things when we really talk about these things out loud, universal things that take away that confidence, and other things that give confidence back. So maybe that's a better place to sit than sort of thinking in terms of, should a writer approach first, or should because I think that can vary a little bit. One of the things I will say is that, without opening the floodgates, you know, and what you mentioned there, Sam, as well, and yes, it might take some time to get back, is that we would definitely be happy to hear from writers directly, and where we can make recommendations for where these partnerships might forge. But it wouldn't be our preferred methodology, because, again, back to this writing confidence thing, you're talking about small teams of people that, you know, you have this vision in your head of ivory towers and loads of readers, but I mean, really, you're talking about a small number of human beings that are going through all of these things fastidiously. Yeah, exactly. So and it's very important, you know, to make sure that what is coming through is catching the attention in the right way. And I think that's really important. So there are things that will make one channel more confident than another, but I think there are some common pieces. One thing is that, have you actually watched the television channel that you're pitching to? Do you actually know what else is on the channel? And I think that's really important, because we'll often see, and again, I sit across drama and factual commissioning, that you'll see stuff coming in that clearly would never be on our channel, simply because we already have that on our channel. And I think that they're important just notes, just to make sure. And I know it's different with the longer form with scripted and drama, but you'll get your cues and clues from the types of programming that are there. You can see them on the EPGs. You don't have to sit down for hours watching any of the channels, but you can get a sense, you can flavor, you can go onto the players, and you can get a sense of what's there, and do your due diligence, because, you know, I'm going to say it does happen an awful lot that we have to turn down people graciously, because we're seeing a lot of the same ideas coming our way, and so to make sure it's new and that it feels sort of shaped for a channel like ours, for example, doing a little bit of research into the channel, and we can help you with that as well. We can send you lists, the other thing that Sam mentioned about short form, getting in a short sort of top line into us directly and say, is this roughly, we're developing up something around this space, is this something that you'd be interested in? Absolutely, we can give you very quick answers on that. It's very hard when you get a really long full deck that is kind of perhaps structured the wrong way around, and that you're going, you've got a really busy day and you've got X amount of things to get through, and you're going, oh my God, this is going to take me an hour to get through this. And in the first paragraph, often commissioners talk about falling in and out of love with an idea in the first paragraph. So, just make sure you get your good stuff up front that we can get. And if I can give you one little tip, and then I'll take the mic away from myself, is that I often work with writers who are novel writers who are getting into the TV space, and they can be quite slow to give away the actual idea of the show. It's almost like they're writing on the back of a book in Eason's. You need to step away from that. You need to give the commissioner an understanding of what the arc of this show is, and if you'll invariably be working against your own sensibilities to give away a little bit more than you would in the back of a book. You're not trying to tease us to buy a book and open it. You're telling us the story. You have to give us a sense of what is happening in an episode across the arc. What are the key characters doing? You're not teasing us. You're telling us, and tell us really quickly so that we can so we can get in behind it or not. A couple of things on that I think would be useful.
I think as well, it's very important to know who you're writing for, who's your audience, and what are they watching, because channel loyalty is gone. Like we're particularly looking at this for the under 35 dramas that we have in development. They don't care what channel it's on. They'll watch what they want to watch, and they'll watch it where they watch it. So, what are they watching? What's ticking their boxes? I think it was, I don't know, I forget who mentioned sex education. I mean, that is a absolutely perfect drama for that age group. Stranger Things went into that. Then slightly older, the Phoebe Waller Bridge one that Andrew Scott was in, Fleabag. It's like, I'm not saying copy them, but what is that audience watching and why are they watching it? And know your audience. And because with some of the under 35s ones, they started off and suddenly it became all about the adults, and it lost its way. So know your audience and know what they're watching and why they're watching it.
That's really valuable advice. Thanks for that. Eddie, what do you think?
I suppose it's hard to add much to that. I think, as Deirbhile says, you got to know the audience. And I suppose it's part of the challenge for us as like professionals working in this space is like, you have to hold these two things in your head. We need to understand how audiences behave and try and behave like audiences ourselves. So, as Colin was saying, you want to fall in love. You want to fall in love with a project, and then once you fall in love with it, you want to know where's it going next, where's the engine, how's it sustainable. But it sounds kind of brutalist, but that's how people watch it. That's how you watch the telly. It's how I watch the telly. If you got a remote, it's different, from other platforms, from other media, where you're reading a book or you've paid your ticket for a movie that you've read. You've got this increasing phenomenal wealth of alternative choices. So the competitive set is infinite. So people can go anywhere at any second of any viewing experience. So we're constantly in this sort of like really quite aggressive sort of attempt to, especially on linear, to kind of retain audiences at all times. And it can be tough, in that, like, if you get into this business sort of by accident or design because you love writing, you love scripts, you love these beautiful projects. But I mean, the biggest crimes against television on my watch and commissioning, you know, of which there be many, are generally kind of driven by over-optimism, you know, when you kind of think, oh, I think I can, this could make it, you know, and then it's a tough thing if you're a people pleaser like me, you know, to say no to good projects, but you kind of have to, you know, and I mean, there's, you know, the mathematics of it. I mean, like how many people are on this call? Like 60, you know, how many projects will any of us commission like this year? You know, it's just maths. There's a lot of kind of attrition there. So I think what people have said is kind of correct. You know, you want to be in the whole your health to go on this journey, you know, and when I meet new writers, it's generally the first thing, you know, what, you know, the more you love the script, the more kind of tough love you have to give them, you know, like, you know, you got to be prepared for what can be quite a punishing obstacle course ahead. And this project that you have invested your life and soul into, that's your, you know, it's your baby, you know, it can get really kind of roughhoused around a bit, like en route, you know, both in terms of the pure editorial process of deciding whether you like it or enough, you know, and then also, you know, I think there's a question about the pie chart is a reference to the fact that your funding needs, you know, various people to join hands to fund it. So we might be 20% investors or 40% or 50%, but that's only, you got to get the rest of those percentages together. So you'll also have to deal with other stakeholders and other editorial voices, and that can mean that, you know, there's compromises en route, or you have to set it somewhere that it's not set to trigger a tax break or whatever, you know. All sorts of things can happen. But look, as I say, it's an art and a science, you know. It's you want to create this beautiful thing that we can all feel like invested in and fall in love with, but then, you know, somebody's going to pay for it, you know. It just boils down to quite brutal maths, you know, at the end of it, and people, I think, need to probably understand that, and that's part of the job that we do. We're assessing beautiful things, but also kind of very, very practical nuts and bolts kind of pragmatic propositions.
If I could just echo exactly that point, just back to the commissioning confidence piece. I think they're the pieces when you can we take in a top line and just get a sense where the idea is going and give a steer on that. Yes, it's harder to do time-wise. You know, I'd love to be able to say that there's a huge team of people and we can give you that feedback all the time. But in principle, yes, a page coming in that gives us a sense of who the characters are, what the arc is, where this is going, what the mechanic of it is, to get a sense of, are we heading in the right direction? That's something we're definitely happy to do. But back to that commissioning confidence piece, you know, there's bringing this to a producer who can put that shape on that and give a sense of what the finance plan is going to be on this, what distributor they have a relationship with, what the rigor is behind it as far as kind of, okay, who's the directing talent perhaps. It just escalates them way further down the road to being propositions that you can go, okay, this is something we're going to bring forward to commissioning round, bring forward to soft funding applications and funding rounds, you know. So I suppose they're two very different things. One is, you know, can you bring an idea to the channel and see, has it got legs? But that's a very preliminary early thing to do, and if we can get to it, we definitely would, and we'd get back to you. But on the flip side of that, then really the ones that tend to get actioned are the ones that move into those other spaces. They've had a pass on them, they've been budgeted, and there's a co-production model that we obviously, as Eddie mentioned as well, we can get right in the heart of that, you know, as to leverage some of our co-production partnerships and distribution partnerships and all of that. And that's one of the key things, I suppose, we're lucky in the commercial context that we're in, that we can do that. But I suppose there's two different things. One is, how do I get an idea across to see, is this something? But expect that to take another year or two afterwards before it would be in the shape it would need to be to start moving forward to funding. I think, and having a really key executive producer or somebody who's given it that pass is really useful as far as building confidence for an idea.
Brilliant, thank you. So Eddie used the phrase tough love, and I think that's something we should touch on a little bit, because we all know that just statistically, more stuff gets rejected than gets commissioned. It's just part of the process. but it's, you know, it's a learning curve for writers. It's something that we always have to, you know, learn to be resilient about. And it can be tricky when you get that rejection or you get those really harsh notes. So I just love if you guys could kind of talk a little bit about maybe just a bit of advice or some tips about how writers can maybe process those notes or those no's, and just, you know, from your side of the table. Sam, I'm going to start with you because I know. Sorry, I got muted there for some reason.
I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, so Sam, you've been on both sides of the table. You've been a script editor, you've been a writer, now you're a development exec. Talk to us about rejection and being a writer and how we can handle it.
I mean, I think I read a quote from, I can't remember who it was the other day, but just that if anyone reads your script, be eternally grateful. And I think for me, I always thought that whenever anyone was reading my scripts, and I think, you know, even we've seen scripts that have gone into probably everyone here that have gone on to and may have been rejected and have gone on to something else. And I think writing, especially screenwriting, is really part of a journey. And so I think, you know, if you look at what you're doing as a blueprint, and then take what you can from that person, and hopefully we can make it together. If not, hopefully it goes on to something else, or you learn something from that. I think, you know, anything. I've been, you know, personally, I've submitted scripts, but I've also been, you know, on 2-year development processes, and you get right to the end, you've been told you're greenlit, and then it falls apart. Someone else, you know, an exec takes over and says, no, I don't want to do that. But it can happen, and it can happen for so many different reasons. And I think, again, you know, I originally came from acting, and so you're constantly turning up and getting rejected. But I think, you know, the Bryan Cranstons and the De Niros, they always talk about treat every audition as something to learn from. And I think if you do that and you have that frame of mind, you can continue to build your script and build your project.
Brilliant. That's really helpful. Deirbhile?
We try to give comprehensive notes about why something didn't go through. And for us, a lot of the time, it's pure funding. I can give you 3 projects that we would have loved to go ahead with, but funding was the key factor why we couldn't go ahead with them. But the thing about the TG Ceathair development projects is, if you get to the 5 shortlist and you get money to develop those to switching the camera on, they belong to you. So if you get, you know, we're not looking for money back or anything like that. That project belongs to you, and you can bring that to another market. You can bring that. The thing about Irish language content that's in development is it can work in both languages, and it can work in a foreign language a lot of the time, sometimes. So, you know, we do try to give us compromise, you know, let's say we get 25 in, we're shortlisting to 5. You know, 60% of those will be, they have no idea who TG Ceathair is, they don't know what audience they're writing for, and it wasn't written specifically with us in mind. The other 40% are really good, solid projects, and we say to them, give us a wee bit more. And then that could end up being maybe 19. And from that 19, we choose 5 to go into full development. Out of those 5, 2 and sometimes 1 will go into production. But those that have gotten to 5, that project belongs to them. And just because we can't fund it doesn't mean somebody else mightn't be able to fund it. So they can keep it. And, you know, it's the money's gone into it. It has the team behind it. It's fully developed. Because those top 5, they've worked their off to get them to that. Nothing is left undone, right down to the key team, and they're ready to go. So what TG4 needs more than anything is more money. That's what we need. So, you know, because none of that money is spent in the independent sector, every red cent of it. And so what TG4 garners in advertising, that's the acquisitions budget. So no public money is spent on acquired content. All of it is spent in the independent sector. So yeah, more money, that's what we need. We have let projects go that we'd have loved to gone ahead with, but we're, you know, fiscally not there, you know, so yeah.
Of course. Now that makes a lot of sense. Eddie, anything else you want to say about the tough love part of the job?
Yeah, it's painful, you know, like it's tough. You know, like I think Sam said it earlier, you know, I think we have kind of 2 things to give you, you know, kind of like 2 resources, like some cash and some kind of time, you know, and something that behaves like expertise, you know. So if you're getting either, you know, you're probably getting something, you know, that's not nothing, you know. So it's in a weird way, if we didn't give a monkeys about your project, you wouldn't be hearing notes back, you know. And people generally are inundated. So once you step into this kind of scripted world, and I'm more of a kind of a mongrel here, you know, it was a bit like myself and Colin, shouldn't even be here, you know. We're kind of the multi-genre kind of like hobbyists, but I think once you once you get into this genre, you get inundated with scripts that people are hugely emotionally invested in, and you can't be dismissive of that. You know, like, you know, you kind of, you know, while you want to behave like viewers, you know, the way we all flick past Netflix, it doesn't cost you a thought. You don't. It's like a nanosecond. You use at speed, and you're making decisions. So we have to keep that in our heads, the idea of making fast decisions and understanding innately what the instinctive choices that consumers will make, but at the same time, you know, being supportive of writers, of the creative sector, and being supports. I suppose there's 2 things I'd say. One of them is that if you're getting the investment of notes, that is an investment of sorts from a broadcaster or a commissioner as well, and they're not doing it to kind of prove how smart they are. You know, they're actually doing it because they want to help you shape your project into something that's commercially viable, or that they can kind of take forward, even when they're quite tough notes. And the other thing, I guess, is that it you know, I keep talking about the kind of brutalism of the business. You know, historically, you know, a broadcaster would have sent your script in, and a broadcaster like RTE, you know, or whatever would have been the sole funder of it and sole decision maker. So you're sort of Father, Son, and Holy Ghost there. You kind of judge, jury, and executioner. The project comes in, do you like it enough? Whammy, there's 100% of the money, go and make it, give us a tape, you know. Whereas now we're often, it's the first conversation. If we love it, we're kind of thinking, well, I love it, but I can't pay for all of it. So how can I get how plausible it is in terms of the next step, the steps consequent beyond that? You know, can it get into BAI? Will it trigger the tax break? You know, are there other broadcasters on board? Or just, you know, so we're kind of almost that first dollar in sometimes, that, you know, so you're trying to kind of, you know, so some of the tough love notes have that in mind as well. You know, if you do believe in something, it's almost incumbent on you to be as kind of to really take a blowtorch to it and say, look, you're only in the start of your journey, you know.
Can I jump in on that? Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I think as well, you know, when writers get a rejection, it is tough. And you know, RTE said no, Virgin said no, TG4 said no. I think also you have to realize we're very small teams within those organizations. In TG4, it's myself and Maini Hunlan. We are the 2. And when we're reading those, we take ourselves out of the world and lock down with them and say we're not available to anybody except in an emergency. We give them very, very, we read them diligently. And then we also have to make sure that Físéideann and ourselves are on the same page when it comes to the projects, because they're our other major funder. BAI trust Físéideann and TG Cahar to bring the best projects forward, but we can't do it without the BAI either. But just to remember that, you know, if you don't get an answer, it's not because we don't care, it's because we are in a tsunami. When, you know, if there's a commissioning round, we are in a tsunami and things will get done. But I'm sure RTE and Virgin are the same. There's a very small number of people dealing with these.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's absolutely would be the case, yeah, and I know that's very, very hard. If I could just go back to that piece about being sort of the first one to, you know, and again, I keep jumping off what you're saying, Eddie, as well, but it's so unbelievably true. I suppose it's the territorial piece here of just thinking in terms of, and Eddie, I see that you've clarified the pie chart thing in the chat bar. This is really helpful. The modeling tool percentages, but what the percentages thing brings up again, and this is back to, and Sam, I know you'll relate to this from your script editing and development past as well, but is that you're no longer pitching to somebody, you know, we think in terms of shorthand, and, you know, in the old days, which is like, you know, 10 minutes ago or whatever, that, you know, you might have been able to go in, you would know a commissioner really well, you could get that shorthand sense from them. Are you on a track to somewhere good with this? And actually what they said was probably pretty much what it's going to end up being, because you're working with a smaller team on 100% budget commissions and so on. Obviously drama is more expensive, but, you know, and does that mean that you have to be a kind of think in terms of a camel style project? It has to have a little bit of Norway in there in case we're going to be in Norway. It has to have a little bit of, you know, and as we've often heard here as well, you know, a chicken's head and a camel's body and so on. You can't think like that. It has to be about the story. It has to be about compelling characters, compelling narrative, set in somewhere really, really identifiable, but yet set nowhere, in a sense, that because the themes are so universal, that feel, you know, uniquely Irish in their setting, but universal in their themes, that reach to a really, really broad audience, would be my understanding of it. But back to that point about sort of like, if you understand when you're sending in a pitch document or a deck or a script, that we're the initial gatekeeper, in a sense, and there are layers and layers and layers. There's a huge tick system, and that tick system, traditionally, if you think back to the likes of RTE, might have been quite a short tick system, but now in the international world that we have to be in order to be able to afford these projects, to do them right, we don't want to think in terms of how can we make these things as cheaply as possible. Because, and then again, when I say we, I'm talking about Virgin Media in this case, is that we need to think in terms of these things having international legs as well, because that's the way they're going to be affordable. They need to be of the right quality. They need to be really beautifully Irish in their DNA, but they need to have international legs, or otherwise they don't fit that pie chart, that finance model. So again, think of us as gatekeepers. Think of us that there's layers of people behind us that we need to go through and think in terms of, hey, would this work with that distributor, or hey, would this work with that TV co-production partner? And, you know, and that's kind of the way we're thinking all the time. So what that means is it can slow the process down. Sorry, but it also means that the notes may come back very quickly with it. Look, we can't see this work. If you're getting really informed notes and long notes, and again, sorry to nick this one, Eddie, but it means that we're actually investing in it because we actually would like to see something come back from that. And I would say that sometimes the easiest thing is just to get a good, clear no from people saying, look, is this for you? And sometimes the answer is no for a myriad of reasons, and a lot of the time it's how it's either financeable or not financeable. You know, so that's a few points there.
No, that's really helpful. It kind of actually brings me on to my next question. And so a lot of you have mentioned, you know, the good old days of one broadcaster being able to fully fund a drama series just does not exist anymore. But for writers, you know, when we're coming up with ideas and when we're writing our shows and our pitches, and, you know, we're trying to tell authentically Irish stories, how much should we be thinking about that funding pie chart and the international kind of elements of it? Or should we more be leaving that up to you guys and the producers and just trying to tell the best stories? Deirbhile?
I think that with us, it doesn't exist because, you know, the Irish language is very hard to bring co-producers from other countries on board. So with us, it is the, you know, ILBF, BAI, Físéideann, agus TG Cahar. And that's it. But what I would say to writers, because it's worked for us before, when they collaborate with each other, read each other's stuff, because when you're in it, sometimes you can't see the wood for the trees. And this is a script editor's job as well. But if you talk to each other, you know, don't be so precious that you wouldn't show something to somebody else that you trust, and they can say that character is completely irrelevant to the story. Get rid of him. You know, we're supposed to like her, but she's not likable. Like, you know, talk to each other, and also, as I said, know who you're writing for, who that audience is. But funding wise, for us, it's pretty closed. You know. RTE and Virgin, you know, there's a lot of collaboration with the BBC, with various big other broadcasters around the world. We don't have that luxury. So, but if, you know, more funding would give us more opportunity to do what we want to do. Yeah.
Yeah, now that makes a lot of sense. Sam, what do you think just in terms of that balance between just writing a really good, authentically Irish project and thinking about the funding and the more international elements?
I think just in my brief experience, I think the most important thing is to write it from your heart and write what you want to know. Write what you want to say, and you want us to know. I think, and I've seen that really in action just on a number of projects recently. We had a project that was we were looking for continuing drama, and the producer was very adamant and said, well, look, it's not continuing drama, it's going to be a four-parter. And he said, look, if we're going to we could have a look at changing it, but I don't think that will help the story. Maybe this isn't the story. And we said, no, let's have a look at what you would do if it was a four-parter differently, because at the moment it's sort of neither here nor there. And he came back, and now that has gone into further development as a four-parter, as a kind of state of the nation piece. So, and that wouldn't have happened unless that producer really stuck to their guns. And I think also, just to pick up on, that's how I think how important having a good team behind your writing, because the writer, I've met the writer of that, and she is brilliant, but that producer really fought for that writer. And I think that's a really important kind of team to have around you, and someone backing you. But also on that, I think what I've seen in some proposals and certainly some projects we're working on now is the writer has written this great story, but there might be a character, say, that's is Irish, or the character, but they might say, look, that character could be English Irish, or that character could be American Irish. And that might be another way to open up funding and get that pie chart filled out. So, you know, I think the most important thing, and I come from a big background of story, is to really get, and as Deirbhile said, like, get your script editors around, get your team at that level as well, and get your story as strong as possible. And if you do that, and it comes from the heart, I think that's when you're delivering something really unique, which is what I think what we're all looking for.
Absolutely. Eddie?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds right, you know. I mean, I think I probably polluted this session by talking about business and pie charts and all that, whereas like we want, you know, I mean, commissioners are terrible people, you know. Sometimes we say we want one thing and then we fall in love with the direct opposite, and so again, like viewers, you don't know what you're going to love until you see it, it's over to you guys to put it in front of us, but in terms of trying to game the system, absolutely, you don't want this to become an impediment to good projects, but we'd find I remember it was a guy, Steve McCormick, who runs MediaCon at a conference a few years ago, said to me, when this whole kind of scripted gold rush was kind of starting to kind of pick up, he was saying, look, he thinks countries sell what they're known for. So that, in this international marketplace, the Brits do The Crown and Downton, the class system, and the Italians do Gomorrah and the Young Pope. They got the Pope and the Mafia. What have we got? It's sort of Kerrygold and terrorism, or well, I don't know. I'm not sure what our thing is, but but there's that thing. I know there's a question in the inbox there about place. I think I don't think that's necessarily limiting. I think any Irish writer reeks of Ireland. They can't help themselves. There's something about kind of this place that makes kind of like people who have an interesting approach to language, to identity, to kind of conflict, to relationships, and there's tons and tons of great writers, writing on various platforms. So I think that's an element of place, is like being an Irish writer per se. You can do, there's a broad spectrum of things there, and I don't think that's necessarily horribly limiting, but for me, I think it does ground you oftentimes in a slightly more socio-realist world, or something that is, it's not quite as surrealist or magic realist, or kind of, I mean, in another genre, we used to do hidden camera shows when I was in RTE, and there was a difference between the trigger happy TV, and British kind of hidden camera was very much about visuals, a giant snail crossing a kind of a zebra crossing, or the guy with a giant phone. Whereas like all the kind of the Irish hidden camera, from Naked Camera and kind of some of the stuff Peter Foot, the gang, were doing, is about language. It's about dialogue. It's about embarrassing situations that just look like normal life, where people behave like they've got mental problems, but everyone's totally forgiving of them. So there's something that's about that, the Irish hidden camera, that I think is a bit like Irish writing. There's a sense of place shot through it, and the flip of that is, what we're finding, at BBC Northern Ireland, is occasionally we'll bring a project to colleagues and network and say, look, we've got this great new project. It's set in a, it's a returnable, set in a plastic surgery clinic, and there's kind of a romantic triangle, and a kind of a diverse cast and a new writer, and they go, yeah, and they say, and it's set in Northern Ireland. They go like, oh, why is it Northern Ireland? There's something about, like, once you locate something, certainly in Northern Ireland, and perhaps in Ireland per se, that is quite defining as a starting point. People go, all right, why is it there? So I think it's hard to kind of like get off the rock in that respect. It's hard for you to kind of unmoor your writing from this place, and for the most part, I think it's an asset.
Brilliant. Colin, I know you had slightly touched on this already, but just something else you want to add?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I would like to go back to this thing about, and Deirbhile mentioned earlier on about trying it out with your team. I could not emphasize that enough. And I know none of you would do this, but don't have the commissioning editor be the first back to notes. Don't let the commissioning editor be the first person to read your script, because you're so preciously holding it next to your chest that you're really confident, and then throw the commissioner and expect those notes to be like, there are things that working in your own team, your own trusted network, even before you get as far as having a producer on board, a producer will put a certain amount of rigor, and as Sam says, really champion why it is the way it is. But try it out loud, try it in front of people, try segments of it, do sides, around tables, do your due diligence on it before it gets near the broadcaster, because that gives you all that fantastic confidence as to why it is the way it is, and the DNA of why it's built. Back to story, they have to just be fantastic stories, great yarns, really well structured, incredible casting as best you can. What does good look like? And really, that's that's more important than location, really. You know, it comes through in the writing, as Eddie said there. Yeah.
Brilliant, really helpful. So now a bit of a practical question. Do you guys have any upcoming rounds or any deadlines that writers should be keeping in mind over the next couple of months, Sam?
Sorry, just unmute there. Yeah, I think the biggest thing for us is Storyland, and as I said, it's a bigger project this year with a much bigger budget. There's an information session coming up on the 4th, so if anybody, I think the Writers Guild should have been sent the invite, so we should, but if anybody needs it, we can circulate it. Yeah, I think we're trying to attract as many people as we can, and from that, the idea is that like Colin was saying, with Virgin, we'll lower it down. We get readers in, and I think the initial submission will be a pitch. I think it used to be a script, and now it's just a pitch, so we can hopefully get through more and more. And then the plan is to develop a certain number and then produce a certain number, probably around 3, to go to go on television on RTE2 in next year, about hopefully middle of next year. So, but we do also have rolling rounds of commissioning. So yeah, please get in touch if there's anything.
Right, Deirbhile?
Yeah, TG Car will be the same. We're hoping to have another Cine Car round in 2022. And I think as well, definitely collaborate with other people, because sometimes projects will come in and they'll have the world defined, but not the characters. And, you know, at a pitching session, like I've said to writers before, see him, who cares about him? He's completely irrelevant. He does nothing for the story. Like, take out anything that's surplus to requirements, hone it down, and, you know, be very clear about who your audience is, what story you want to tell them, and these are the characters that you're going to use to tell them. For RTE and Virgin and maybe other channels, like big names, you know, do it for them, like Jimmy Nesbitt is in Bloodland, which I'm really enjoying. For TG Car, that's not an issue, doesn't matter. We have really good talent in the Irish language, Donal O'Haley, Dara Duan, you know, we have very good actors, male and female, in the Irish language that can work in both languages. But we're always looking for new talent. You know, we don't need the big name or the big cast. You know, that doesn't, you know, we're across casting when it comes to it, absolutely. But, you know, big names are, you know, that doesn't matter to us really. It's all about, as Eddie said, as Sam said, as Colin says, it's all about the story. Because if it's not on the paper, it's not going anywhere else.
Super. Eddie, any deadlines, any rounds coming up with BBC Northern Ireland?
Yeah, we have a round up at the minute that's closing in I think it's 12th of November. So it's bbc.co.uk/commissioning. You'll find us on there. I mean, the big development for us at the minute is a kind of a as we bust out of the kind of linear world into iPlayer environment. We've got, you know, we have this sort of internal co-commissioning model where money that would have been spent previously on exclusively within Northern Ireland in the opt-out linear environment, so local shows for local people, and then you've got sort of big BBC in London doing the big shows. Increasingly, we've got this new kind of 50-50 model where we come together to co-fund shows. Again, you know, the idea of kind of what we used to run, which is an opt-out model where you have the main sort of BBC, 1, 2, and 4 linear channels, and then you step onto the pitch at certain points. That the logic of that is starting to break down in the iPlayer environment. So, so this is all part of a recently launched new strategy, and as part of that, we're interested in looking at propositions which we can kind of co-fund with our colleagues in network and other parties as well. So that's kind of live. So that strategy was launched last year. We've got a round that closes mid-November. We're trying to develop, we're starting from a relatively low base in Northern Ireland. Obviously you've got some of the bigger dramas coming into the jurisdiction line of duties there. Bloodlands came in. You've got Hat-Trick in the jurisdiction as well. What we're particularly interested in the minute is 6 half-hour sized comedy that can play on BBC 3 or BBC 2. Now again, Northern Irish writers are, a lot of this is about what we call portrayal in the BBC. So it's about, a part of that broad agenda I'm talking about is about voices from the periphery, from Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, the north of England, being carried in network slots, in a bigger part to bigger audiences across these islands. So so Northern Irish writers or particular interest, or writers who can be designated or self-identify as Northern Irish, they and kind of Northern Ireland Screen are kind of a useful partner for us in terms of helping kind of like manage that, how manage that designation. So yeah, that's on our commissioning website right now.
Super. Colin, I know you guys have kind of a factual fact-out round at the moment, but where are you in terms of drama?
Well, yeah, we have a round which is focused more on the sort of BAI deadline, which I know is around the 16th of December. So we have that, and that's in the factual and fact-end entertainment space at the moment. But we, obviously very happy to see some drama come through there as well. We have obviously a pipeline of things that we're developing at various stages from a scripted space at the moment. But what I would say is that our drama intake tends to be in a rolling commission environment. We don't have specific call outs for drama, so get them in when they're ready. We do like to sort of work back from the 2 BAI rounds a year, even with the drama, again with the soft monies and all that, so that can give you a little bit of structure about sort of, obviously if you're looking for support into a BAI round that's relatively soon, obviously that means it has to be as quite built, pie chart and all, producers in place, director and so on. You'd need a pilot script written, and you'd need the full story arc written for that as well. Probably a bit of a lookbook, a sense of casting, a sense of location, and most of your HODs at least written up, with intent that if the project lands, that they're on board. Just think in terms of all of those, soft monies and those application rounds that you need to go through. If you're getting ideas into us that you want us to kind of feedback on, that maybe at sort of like early draft or whatever, we have a full rolling round, so you can get them in at whatever stage. So you just get them into our normal commissioning portal.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Great.
Oh, sorry, and yes, and the VM Discovers will be launched very soon. That's coming in the next few weeks. We'll be opening that up as well. So, and they're terrific initiatives, the VM Discovers short
Excellent.
films.
We'll keep an eye out for all of that. So we're going to go to Q&A shortly. I know we've some questions in the chat already. Anyone else who wants to ask a question, if you just put it in the chat and we can get to them that way. But I have one last question for the panelists. So you guys have given some real gems of advice this afternoon, but I just want to ask you for one final piece of advice, and what the best piece of advice you want to tell this group of writers is. Colin.
Your idea is not a secret. We're all in this together. Get your very best story. Make sure it's totally legible and understandable in the first paragraph. commissioners fall in and out of love with an idea in the first paragraph, the first half page. So make sure that's your, think real estate for anybody who writes in other genres like magazines. That's your real estate. That first paragraph is where you get the attention. Remember, you're talking to commissioners who may be the only commissioner reading lots and lots of things. So, you know, get your idea in there. Don't make it a secret and try it out with other people.
Super. Eddie?
When I started a gig running the entertainment department in RTE, like many years ago, I met Gay Byrne the first week, and he said to me, "Nobody knows nothing," and I thought that wasn't bad, you know. Like we're supposedly kind of we're charged with accountability and making decisions here, but you know, I've said it already. The best idea doesn't exist yet. You know, we haven't heard it yet, and we want something that we can suddenly get excited about. It's a bit like when a new box set comes out, and you go like, "This sounds great. I'm going to watch that." So it's, you know, while it can be a brutalist business at times, you do want to stay true to your idea and almost inflict it on us at times. You know, sometimes some of the better ideas are ones that people said no to, and they've come back in the comedy space with a little taster tape, and you go, right, oh, now I get it. You know, and that's, you know, you can almost, you know, there's probably more drama made in Ireland than there has been in many years. But oftentimes they're made through these more complex kind of funding arrangements, so it can be more of a complicated pathway to getting stuff made, you know. So you don't want that to, as I said, you don't want that to become the enemy of cool ideas. But look, I mean, you know, I think at times, you know, we'll sort of, you know, we want to be proven wrong on occasion. You know, we want you know, something to come out of the blue that just surprises, you know. And like I say, you know, we don't know what we want until we see it, unfortunately. Sorry.
Right. Deirbhile?
Get yourself into a writer's room. Get onto a job that's ongoing. Get into EastEnders. Get into Coronation Street. Get into, you know, go after a writer's room that you can be a part of, because you learn a lot from that. Many of you maybe have done that already, but for anybody who hasn't done it, it will teach you the nuts and bolts of how television series get made. And also, I think I've said it already, and Colin has said it, Eddie has said it, Sam has said it. Don't be precious about your idea. Thrash it out with people that you trust, and make sure we're not the first ones to see it. And after that, there was one other thing I wanted to say, but I've said it already. You know, I've said it already. For TG Cahar, just before I go, because I'm actually going to the blood bank now at 4 o'clock, we also have a space to try out things for online only. So, you know, BBC Three were very good at that. Try it out online, and if it's garnering an audience, bring it on to the main linear channel if it suits the main linear channel. But there is space to try things out. But my best bit of advice is, if you haven't done it already, get into a writer's room, get stuck into something that's ongoing, and, you know, learn how the system works. Because doing something of that magnitude by yourself is tough. You need friends, you need people who'll be brutally honest with you, and getting into a writer's room of something that's been going on for 20 years, like Ross and the Ruin, we train writers in there all the time. And I'm sure RTE does the same. Virgin, maybe not so much since Red Rock was finished, but you know, there might be space to do that. But become an apprentice in a writer's room and you learn a lot.
Absolutely, that's really valuable advice. And I see a couple of Fair City colleagues here who I know would completely agree with that. Sam?
Sorry, yeah, that's absolutely great advice. And I think most of the things have been said. I think one thing that really strikes me that sets submissions apart is people who know what their show is. And I think the Americans were calling it the North Star for a while. What is your North Star? And I think it's amazing because you see, and it's quite interesting to see when we develop a couple of scripts, because often it can fall apart, or even just to get a scene breakdown. So I think, as Deirbhile said, the more work you can do, the more advice you can get from other people. Don't work in a vacuum, because I've seen in my brief time in this role at RTE shows that weren't going to go ahead, that the next day are going ahead, and vice versa as well. So there are so many elements to why your show may or may not get made. I mean, you look at shows like The Queen's Gambit and Squid Game; they were being developed for 30 years now, and are massive. And so I think they're kind of really inspirational to me. So I think, keep working and don't stop believing.
Brilliant.
I won't sing it.
Okay.
Go on, Sam. Go on, sing it, sing it.
You don't want me to do that. It may scar everyone here.
Okay, which brings us now to our Q&A section. So as I say, writers in the audience, do please put your questions into the chat. We have a couple of questions in here already. Some of them we may have covered just in the course of the debate. So if I do skip over your question, it's only that I think it's something we've already covered. Mary is asking, how open are you all to brand new ideas? My instinct is that the answer to that is absolutely. But if anyone wants to add something in on that.
Yeah, I mean, we're always open to brand new ideas. I mean, every drama that comes into us is a brand new idea. So yes, but for Teaching Cahal, the writer must be an Irish language writer. We can tell a script that's been translated from English like a mile off. So if you don't have, you might have a good idea, but you need to collaborate with an Irish language writer, because they are the ones who will get the dialogue right, who will get the feel right, who will get the sulala right. And as somebody said earlier on, what channel are you writing for and why would they want it? Who's your audience? Basic things. Yeah. And don't be precious. Thrash it out with trusted friends. But brand new ideas, absolutely yes.
Super. Eddie, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I mean, we're as open to brand new ideas as the audience are, So I mean, it's sort of, an idea needs to be relatively processable, to a certain extent, and and as was said earlier, I mean, we try and put ourselves in the position of people sitting at home with a remote, so you'd want to have something to kind of to draw you into it in the first place, but you want to be surprised, at all times. Like nobody wants kind of, shit old ideas, I think, in my experience. I don't know. That's just me.
No, I think that's.
I think everybody's the same. Like, I mean, we all want. It's stupid. Like, I mean, I'm in this genre by accident, but like everybody wants to be associated with big smash hit records. Programs that everybody's talking about. It's such an exciting genre to be in. I mean, myself and Colin, we kind of tool around in other genres as well, the factual, and that's grand. And it's great work, but there's nothing kind of like changes people's outlook. It's culturally significant. You just set off bombs with a scripted piece.
So right.
It's unbelievable. It's powerful. So that's why we're in it.
Yeah, absolutely. I echo that as well. New, absolutely. And just bring your best stuff, and it's and yeah, we won't always be able to give a shopping list out and say these are the things we need to, we will be surprised by the stuff that comes, because writing is as individual as you. We can help with some structure, we can help with some guidance, but it's carved out of you. So and that's the bit that gets us excited as well. Yeah. So yes to new.
Brilliant. Sam, I'm sure you're going to say yes to new as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as long as you know why that new idea, like what's the point of the new idea, because I think it's absolutely, that's exactly what we're looking for brand new ideas, but you know, how is this going to work, and what's it going to give our audiences, basically. I think, and as Eddie said, you know, like drama can be such a powerful force in society, and I think that it really is our jobs to look for that. So I guess that's no pressure, but that's what we're all looking for.
Yeah. Could I just jump in on that? I just there's a kind of a technique that's used in pitching in the UK an awful lot around Channel 4 BBC, would be the shortcutting technique of, and I think Irish producers particularly can be a little bit reticent to use this, but back to this notional idea that to really transcend this and get the sort of finance involved, it has to be read by a lot of people that are outside of our own sphere. So you know, the same proposal will be in front of the BAI and Screen Ireland, but and RTE or Virgin Media or TG Car or BBC NI, but it'll also be with a distributor in Germany or in the UK or the US. So you've got so many people reading it. Sometimes shortcutting is actually a good thing to do. It's used in factual a lot, where you might say, you know, it's using parallels like this is X Factor meets For the Love of Dogs with a brand new twist, you know. So you know, a lot of Irish producers have tended to run away from that because they feel under the shadow of the UK that they feel like we're being derivative by saying that. But actually, you try go to some of these markets and pitch these things, and the first thing a commissioner will do or a funder will do is say, oh, so this is X Factor meets Paul O'Grady with the Love of Dogs with a twist. And they're shortcutting all the time because they have to sell it to their people. So you're on this kind of like, everybody's truncating down into how do we make this shortcut? How do we get this idea across in 30 seconds? So it's a really good exercise when you're thinking in terms of your long form arc and your pilot script, is how do you get the nuts and bolts of this idea across in as short a period as you possibly can, in the knowledge that this is going to go to many, many, many sets of eyes. And, you know, Eddie will have somebody he wants to send it to. Hey, it's really good. We all want stuff we can share. And, you know, sometimes in the factual world, it's a sizzle. And, you know, when you're working in a channel, you want to send it to the director of programming. They don't have time to read the whole proposal. You send a 2-minute sizzle, and, you know, you're kind of proud to send something that you can share. What can you do the same in the drama? You know, we've often seen posters come in, you know, a finished poster, you know, something that just arrests your attention and gets you to understand the DNA and the flavor of what it is you're putting across in as short a time as possible, which I just didn't do. So there you go.
No, that was really helpful.
Can I just add one more point there, Jennifer? Sorry to jump in. I mean, like, I find oftentimes we have to be less precious about kind of ideas or conceits. I mean, I remember when I was in RTE, someone literally the same day, someone pitched us, 2 different sources pitched precisely the same idea, which was, it was kind of bonkers. It was like taking a W1A approach to the 1916 kind of anniversary. This is pre-2016, but literally both of them came in the same day from totally different, unconnected sources. So it's not that ideas are 10 a penny, you know, but like oftentimes you'll get a lot of similar, there's a lot of zeitgeisty ideas that happen around the same time. And then people, you know, pitch a conceit that can be quite similar to something else, you know. So the novelty of the conceit is one thing. And I think we're less precious about that. It's almost like an ideas factory, you know, and some of the better companies are like that. But it is worth being precious about a voice, I think, you know, and honing your craft, like as Deirbhile says, you know, that capacity to kind of like realize characters, you know, structure scenes, that sort of thing. I think that, you know, certainly, and we would be more interested in we're particularly interested in new voices, especially from what are considered underserved audiences or more diverse audiences. There's been a reference to that today already. But so I think, you know, I differentiate ideas from new voices, you know, it's new voices or new writers are what we're particularly interested in.
Brilliant, thanks for that. So Aideen has asked, I think it's going to be a bit of a hard sums question, about numbers and what the numbers are like in terms of how many submissions you might receive in a year versus how many get developed versus how many actually get made. Now, Deirbhile, you talked to us a bit about that in terms of Cine Car and kind of how that breaks down. obviously we're talking ballpark figures here.
So we could get anything, you know, we normally get up to 25, sometimes 19. We read all of those and we get rid of some of the ideas straight away. Other ones, we ask them to give us a little bit more, and then we hone it down to 5, and out of those 5, 2 will get made. So that's the way we work. And, you know, we're always looking at who's writing it, who's directing it, what's their vision for it. And, you know, for Cahir, you know, when you look at what we've done, Finky, very different to anything out there at the minute, followed by Aracht, which is, you know, in the cinemas now. If you haven't seen it, go and see it. The next one, Foscu, is based on Doyle Ryan's book, The Thing About December. I don't know if any of you have read that book, but Doyle Ryan was at the premiere at the Galway Film Fleadh and liked the film. Next up, and Colin Powell, there's another family film which we really like that'll be going into the picture houses in March, and it's called, we started off with Maghra Buan, but internationally that doesn't mean anything, so we've changed it to Frank Loves Rosie, and it's the first Cine Cahir that the whole family can go to, because it's you know, it's a family story. So at the minute, Tarek is shooting in Kerry, and the Jilgorum, the next family one, will be shooting soon. So, you know, we're doing an awful lot, but we're looking for who's writing it. If they haven't done a feature film before, who's their mentor, who's minding them, who's the script editor, who's the director, what's their vision for the project, who's the producer, are they a robust enough company to take on a project of this magnitude? Because we like the working environment to be in Irish. That's not 100% possible, but on Foscu, for example, which was filmed in Cornamona, it was a completely Irish workplace. There was no member of the crew who couldn't speak Irish on that film. That's what we're about. Upskill, 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 because if you can do it in Irish, you can do it in any language.
Brilliant. Colin, just kind of ballpark ratio in terms of pitches in to development to production?
Well, I meant to say, like Sam, I'm newer to the team. I have been in Virgin Media previously, and other years I spent quite a number of years in development consultancy myself. By the way, hats off to you, Jennifer, because I've done a lot of these sessions from poacher come gamekeeper, the other side, asking commissioners what the hell they want. So I don't have those full metrics for you. What I will say is we'd get less drama submissions over the factual submissions, and that I know that's down to the amount of time these things take to put together, and with respect to everybody. The other thing I will say is that we tend to we will generally back two drama originated Irish drama productions a year. That doesn't mean we wouldn't do more than that, and we have other models that we can explore around, and we've backed even sort of theatrical release as well as TV drama. It depends, but traditionally we like to have 2 drama series a year that we would back. So that's the funneled end. Is you'll certainly see 2 coming through the other end, and that's the model we've been working for the last, I guess, 3 or 4 years. We would have 2 originated landing in spring or autumn. So apologies.
Yeah,
I can't give the exact
that's
numbers,
perfect. That's just
know.
really good for people to get a sense.
Yeah.
Sam, again, I know you're relatively new in the door, so this may be a bit trickier for you, but if you can shed any light on the ratios within RT drama.
Yeah, sorry, we're just, my sister-in-law gave birth yesterday, so we're looking after a 4-year-old, so he's running around. So, very interested in commissioning, actually. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like Colin as well. You know, we only have a certain number of slots every year. So, but at the moment, with the RT2 call out, those projects are all just beginning, and as I said, some of them are half hour, some of them are an hour. So there's 8 of them there that we will be developing, and then I'd say, you know, we have about 5 or 6 on the boil now at different stages of development. Since I've been there, we have I've probably looked over about 20 scripts so far that come in different stages, and some of them might be as the short form, they might be just a paragraph to look at, you know, and then they might not be right for us, but we might recommend to look somewhere else. So yeah, I mean, I think as it's rolling submissions, but then as you can see from the RTE schedule, we don't have a lot of slots at the moment, but that is, I think, increasing, and it's something that we really want to increase across RTE1 and across RTE2. So hopefully there will be more room for new writers to have their work on screen.
Super. Eddie?
Yeah, I suppose to continue a theme, we are kind of, it's probably less helpful for everyone to describe numbers here for us. I mean, we're, as I said, we're changing the engineering of how we work at BBC Northern Ireland in the scripted space, and it's all about trying to build coherent pathways towards big network returnable projects. So all roads lead to a kind of a Derry Girls for me in the scripted comedy space, certainly, and that's in the absence. I mean, that's clearly a Channel 4 show, so there hasn't been one out of Northern Ireland previously. So we're kind of active in various phases of development, from kind of sort of breakthrough voices. We've got, you know, we've had this kind of BLAPS tight shorts scheme, you know, for sort of short form Facebook shorts, you know, and there's probably about 20 of those per year, roughly, or there have been. We're going to re-engineer that. We also have active a co-funded scheme with Northern Ireland Screen, where we work with we've tried to work with 4 of the more credible production companies who are credible for network comedy, so your Hat Tricks, your Mermans, that sort of thing. And each of those guys are working with 2 or 3 or 4 in some cases Northern Irish writers. So there's probably about 12 scripts bopping around there, with being hothoused by those production companies and brought through to more evolved, more home taster tape territory. We would like to kind of get to, you know, we've got a couple of pilots we're committed to, again, half-hour one-off pilots. Again, Northern Ireland Screen are fantastic kind of support in that regard. So we'd love to get to, you know, ideally have about 2 or 3 of those per year. But then ultimately, the next step is we're trying to, you know, we're trying to generate projects that are then plausible to step onto that big network stage, and the numbers aren't great. You know, there hasn't been one historically, so it's quite binary. You know, we're trying to create this from where, you know, where there wasn't one previously. So that's the, so I suppose that's how our filtering process is working, or will start to work as we move forward. And then separately, we're always game for like other more creative funding models. So that's a kind of an east-west thing, you know, between kind of like Belfast and London, whereas we're interested in north-south conversations, like other ways to kind of put together kind of coalitions of the willing to support projects that are of value. But you know, in terms of actual ratios or numbers, it's a wee bit more haphazard, and it's certainly evolving, or more in an evolutionary stage at the minute.
Great. So Eleanor has asked, and we kind of touched on diversity in different voices. So she's saying the world is changing. There is an acknowledged need for more diversity in drama, both in front and behind of the camera, and that a huge amount of that is being done outside of Ireland, which she feels like we're seeing very few, in particular, characters on screen in Ireland who are disabled or neurodiverse. And is there a reason that we're a bit behind on that diversity piece? Anyone want to jump in on that one?
Well, I mean, TG is trying very hard to get all those voices onto the screen. It's difficult because not all of them can speak the Irish language. But if any of you have seen Hector Aidan Lua, he's been talking to the new citizens of Ireland, how they're coping, what they like, what they don't like. And also in Ross na Ruin in the last few weeks, we've had a character who came to the B&B and unfortunately found a rat in the sitting room. So her blog basically trashed the place. You know, the B&B in Rossaloon could end up on KipAdvisor. So yeah, we're always trying to bring more diverse characters, people, of all kinds onto the screen. And, you know, Channel 4 are very good at it. They're very good at it. We can learn a lot from Channel 4 on how they do it. But yes, we're behind. We're behind. There's no doubt about it. And yes, we want it.
If I could jump in there as well, there's so much work. That's a terrific question. I'm so glad it was brought up, actually. Diversity, inclusion, equity, it's right at the heart of every conversation we have around casting at the moment, every single thing. And yes, I think it would be fair to say there's nobody is going to take a bow and say we've gotten this absolutely bang on right. And we you know, globally, I think there's a lot of people would admit that, you know, this is a long time coming, but it's most definitely here. It's in the DNA of everything we talk about, we've got some new drama series coming that have a really interesting mix, but I can't tell you about it. But you know, and obviously our VM Discovers short film competition is all right from the heart as diversity and inclusion. We've got some extraordinary stories coming through. As I say, they're at rough cut at the moment. Can't wait to release them to you guys. But yeah, just watch this space. It sounds a little bit wishy-washy for me to say, but it is absolutely right at the heart of every casting conversation we're having on everything we're doing right
Brilliant.
now.
Thanks for that. I'm going to jump on to the next question just because we have a few more questions in the box and I don't want us to go too much over time. But Sam or Eddie, if there's anything you want to add on that diversity piece, feel free to pop something into the chat box as well. So Rachel has a question that's specifically for BBC Northern Ireland. And are you guys, Eddie, open to scripts that are set in the Republic, or is it really strictly only Northern Ireland? If someone had a comedy series set in the Republic, would you guys look at it?
We would. I think there's kind of you know, we're as you can guess, I think I'm working for the BBC now, which is fully funded by the license fee. My background is in RTE, where it's half license fee, half ad revenue. So I think I think that makes you a little bit more kind of commercially savvy and open to more kind of like creative, you know, business models. So certainly that's the approach I would take at BBC Northern Ireland. Is, you know, you wouldn't want you want to be as much of an enabler as possible. As we say, the mathematics are very challenging. There's not many projects get made, so you wouldn't want a technical reason to be a reason something doesn't happen. That said, I think the one of the challenges I have at BBC Northern Ireland is at times, you know, it's fundamentally the portrayal agenda is supposed to be about Northern Irish voices and about people, you know, north of the border who pay the UK license fee. So that makes it a bit more challenging. Where I suppose the most useful thing I can say is that if something is definitively a very identifiably a kind of a Dublin story, or like, you know, or has to be set in Kerry or whatever, then it's tricky. Where I think there's opportunities are if you're in this sort of like more generic sort of rural or borderland, or rather than going north or south, go west, I would say, you know, into that sort of chocolate boxy kind of you know, rural kind of hinterland that is stretches from kind of like, you know, it's parts of Derry, you know, Donegal, Fermanagh, Leitrim and south, you know. I think a project that's located there where we can all pretend it's sort of in a sort of a generic Ireland of somewhere, and we don't have to be too definitive about it. And as long as if the voice, you know, doesn't feel so so definitively, I mean, I think we are, you know, it's horrible to say, I think we might be a little bit too nationalist in terms of some of the comic voices. Some of the northern comic voices, I think, are occasionally slightly more abrasive. You know, it's more of a kind of a boxing match, I think, rather than you know, where the jokes, you see that in some of our panel shows, you know, where the joke's on you, rather than, I think, there's a nice kind of warm bath Southern comic voice, which is Father Ted-ish, where the joke's on me, which are self kind of satirizing, you know, and certainly we'd be open to something that kind of lived in that environment in the comedy space, you know, if it felt, you know, if it didn't feel like so definitively non-northern that we wouldn't have like a bit of air cover for it. So look, I mean, that's a long answer to a short question. Yes, it's the answer. And yes, again.
Game.
Yeah, exactly.
I absolutely love it. And
Yeah.
I think that one of the most iconic moments was the flags. If you haven't seen the flags, please watch the flags. Listen, I have to leave. I'm going to put my email on the chat so that anybody that wants it can send me a question. So sorry to have to go, but I have an appointment. I have to hit it. Give blood, everybody. They're low. Go and see Aracht. And anybody that wants to send me a question, I'm putting my email up now. Okay.
Thank you so much, Deirbhile. It's been brilliant to have you on board. So there's a couple of questions about finding producers and how to find producers. Now, I know that's not really your remit as commissioning editors. What I will say, kind of with my chair of the guild hat on, but also as a writer, we can get frustrated about how small the Irish industry is, but it also gives us a really great advantage in that it's way easier here to make contact with producers, to meet producers for coffee, to send them an email, to talk to them about the kind of projects that you're doing. And I think, you know, take advantage of that networking, take advantage of the Writers Guild and the kind of courses that we do and the networking events that we run. Obviously, it's all much harder, you know, in lockdown, we're not getting as much face-to-face opportunity, but that will happen. And it really is just about reaching out and asking questions. Sam, Eddie, Colin, anything you want to add there just in terms of connecting with producers?
Network. Go to things. Wear out your shoe leather. Be at things. Be physically at things as much as you possibly can. I know, as Jennifer said, it was difficult. I do find this environment actually really quite useful. There's so many day-to-day dealings that we're having with people in this environment. We're getting quite used to it, although not everybody's systems work exactly the same way. And when it works, it works. When it doesn't, it doesn't. But I mean, I just feel that the barrier to being able to just be yourself and chat has gone now, and we're getting on with it and just doing work this way. And I think this Zoom environment won't change. We'll always have this now, and I think it's made a lot of accessing new people quite a bit easier. I think I certainly find, can you do Zoom for 10 minutes, an easier ask than can I meet you for an hour to pitch something that I'm going to be after 5 minutes have to say something wouldn't be for us, you know. But I like your hat, you know. It's like, you know, if you can basically get sort of short meetings, or have you got 10 minutes just to kind of have a look through this, is a little bit of an easier ask. Or getting your top page in and saying, you know, here's the kind of concept we're looking at, can you give me some short notes on this, can you steer me in the right direction? But you know, not just waiting till you get to talk to commissioners. Do that with producers, because producers, you know, there are certain producers and production companies that just like to do their own originated stuff. There's not many of them. Most people are shopping around and are looking for these kind of you know, co-production opportunities, or where they can come in. And there's a lot of production companies out there and producers that do service jobs as well as actually producing content. So, you know, and right across Ireland, the whole island of Ireland, and people in the UK that would look at your own thing. So, you know, get it into a page, I would say. And again, what Eddie was saying about, you know, the page, I think what I was reading from you there, Eddie, was, you know, the page isn't just about the cell at the top. It's what happens after you fall in love with it, that the writing behind it has to be really worked out as well, to paraphrase. But what I'm saying there is, you know, don't just send it out to one or two companies and expect them to, if they didn't come back to you, say, oh, well, therefore the idea is no use. Have the heart, keep going, do the JK Rowling thing, you know, keep sending it out. Don't be precious about it. Get it into a page, have your full Bible ready to go behind that, or your full pitch deck, and just get on to a lot of people, and network and ask and move around. You know, it's, as Jennifer says, we are in a small territory, but we're in a very accessible territory, and our stuff travels. Our stuff travels really well. Most of us here will have spent some time working in other territories and other countries, and it's extraordinary how well the Irish voice travels. It's so beautiful to see it land in so many different territories. You know, have faith in that, and keep talking, keep bashing on those doors, and find people that get you and get behind you.
Brilliant. Marcus was asking kind of specifically about what Deirbhile was saying about approaching writers' rooms, and I think specifically in terms of the long-running shows, Fair City and Rossnaroon, there's info on the websites about how to approach as a writer. I know certainly Fair City did put a pause on taking on new writers purely just during lockdown, because we're all working remotely and it's quite difficult to come in as a new writer when you're not getting to be in the room with people. But the info is there, and it really is just sending a query email, sending a spec script. Yeah, I would, as a Fair City writer myself, I would highly recommend any writers getting into that process just for experience and writing with other writers. It's incredible.
Screen Skills Ireland have been quite involved in setting up some writers'
Yes.
rooms as well in the last couple of years. So you know, I know Emer and Fran and Karina, and they're aware of a lot of the longer running projects, but even some of the LA projects and the link up projects that they've had writers' rooms across. So you know, definitely keep an eye on their stuff as well if you're not doing that as well. I know you guys obviously work in with them as well, don't you?
Absolutely. We do a lot of stuff with them, yeah. And with Barbara and Screen Skill Net as well. They do sort of writers' room training, so all those opportunities. I think it's back to the networking piece again. So Mandy is asking, how willing are you to commission projects that have been written by new or unknown writers? Sam?
Yeah, sure. I'll take that one. Yeah, I mean, I think that certainly happens all the time, and it's certainly happening at the moment at RT, especially with the drama call out. And I think, as we've said before, like, new ideas are really, really, really important across the board. And I think, but I think the important thing is that if you are a new and unknown writer, you really need to try and get a team behind you. And that probably, and it's not so much a team, but it's, you know, you can approach and say to any of us here, I think, as we've said, to kind of go, look, I am new and unknown, what do you think of this? But then if you really wanted to get it across the table, then I think, you know, start approaching the production companies. And that might be, maybe that's through an agent. And I think, you know, on the networking side of things, it's been really refreshing, as Colin said, during this crazy pandemic. Like, I've had people contact me on LinkedIn, email out of the blue, and because we're all sitting at home, you can just say, yeah, well, let's have a coffee for 10 minutes and let's say hello and tell me what you're doing. And strangely, I have run into those people at other points in the industry, and I think that sort of, it's not the biggest. You know, we are a small island, and I think we should be working together to try and kind of help each other out, and whether that can be, you know, with work or even just an audience to things as well. So, you know, I think it can be mystifying, but I think if you kind of get through that cloud, it's like anything else. Say hello and try and get some honest feedback and some help, and hopefully we get the same from everyone as well.
Fab, that's a really great answer, Sam. We are just bang on 4 o'clock, so I think we'll wrap it up here. Thank you so much to Sam, to Eddie, to Colin, to Deirbhile, who had to leave us a little early. Thank you so much to the BAI for funding us, for allowing us to do these events. Thank you so much to all of you for giving up 2 hours of your Wednesday afternoon to join us and to ask some brilliant questions. We are, touch wood, going to be able to get back into doing in real life events next year. But I think we always will keep doing some Zoom events as well, because it is so great to be able to, you know, get people from all across the country to attend. Our ZEBI Awards are happening next Wednesday evening, which will be in real life, which is incredibly exciting. We are limited on tickets though, with COVID and numbers restrictions. So if you don't get to be in the audience, keep an eye on our social media channels and you will get as much of a flavour of the ZEBIs as we can possibly give you. And that is it. Thank you so much to our panel. Alan, is there anything else we need to say?
I think the only thing really to sum up with was, you've done all the thank yous, was just for people attending to On the Horizon coming up, the next event on November the 24th. We've aptly titled it Writing Beyond the Pale, and this will be very much about the strengths and issues for writers working beyond Dublin around the country. So we'll have an in-conversation event around this, so I think that will be quite interesting to attend. And that's really it. Thank you all. What a fantastic session.